Welcome to podcast number 4. And this is an energy special. Honestly, mud, sweat and tears is going to be really different tonight. But we all need energy, and it can come from renewables, other sources. And that's why we've got some fantastic people here. So they're going to introduce themselves. Go on, fire away, boys.
Right, okay. I'm Ben Plummer. I'm an engineer by profession. I've got a small holding in Wales, and I do DIY energy systems, off-grid energy systems.
I'm Paul Burgess. I deal with net zero and energy, all the aspects of net zero, from the grid right the way through to all the various forms of renewable and fossil fuels. And I've got nearly 300 videos on the subject, as well as many papers. I also do the science, and I publish scientific papers as well on it.
Okay, my name's Jason Barker. I too am an engineer and scientist living on a small holding in Wales, and I've been campaigning against onshore wind in rural Wales, particularly the Cambrian Mountains where I live, and I'm now standing for the Senedd in May for the Heritage Party, and I'm their energy spokesman. And it's not that I want to be a politician. It seems to be the only way I can get a voice for our community and the destruction that is proposed.
Good evening, everyone. Pleasure to meet you. So I'm John from TCD Energy. We're a energy consultancy / brokerage. We specialise in helping struggling businesses deal with energy costs, ensure accurate billing, and if needed, we support them with complaints through to the Energy Ombudsman. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening.
Jacob.
Yeah, nice to meet you. I'm Jacob. So I work for Solar Edge. It's a global renewables or solar manufacturer. So I look after all of the sales and the installer base for the north of the UK. And I was actually involved in helping Gareth himself with his installer, also called Gareth, install his first PV system.
Yeah, absolutely over the moon with our new system. So we're all here because I think it's such a complicated topic, energy. You know, people want renewables, people want gas, people want different forms of energy. I'm going to ask you all the first question, okay? And just give me one answer, okay? One answer. Which is the best form of energy? Jason.
But that's a difficult one. I think currently nuclear seems to be a very good option.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I'd go with nuclear or anything that doesn't require a huge amount of land, given that we're a small island nation.
I'd also agree with nuclear, just to follow suit, but for the same reasons, for cost efficiencies and general maintenance of the land.
Jacob.
The scientist in me wants to say energy is agnostic. So as long as it's sustainable and safe, it's a good form of energy.
Good answer. Paul.
Well, given that nuclear is about 3 to 4 times the cost of gas, and if you take away all the subsidies from gas, all the green and things with gas, it's by far the cheapest form of energy even today. And so I go for gas and fossil fuels.
Interesting. This is what I love. We were supposed to have somebody from the nuclear industry tonight, but it didn't quite work out. And I'm tending to go with the majority. We're about to have a big nuclear, a few small modular reactors on Anglesey, and I think it'll be good for the area and good for our energy security as well. I think that's really important. That Paul was talking about gas, but we're importing so much gas from other countries. Should we be drilling for oil and gas in this country? So we'll go backwards this time. I'm going to start with Paul.
Yeah, we should be drilling, and we should be fracking as well. Our fracking regulation is such that if I take this book now and drop it on the floor out on the earth, that would actually is the limit of what you can have as a seismic shock for fracking, which is ridiculous. It's 3,500 times more sensitive than the USA. So I'd go for that. And by all means, there has to be commercially viable. So what the problem is with nuclear, even in Wharfner, is that nuclear is 3 to 4 times the cost. So though the Rolls-Royce are 8 years behind the world, they're having to develop a brand new turbine that's commercial, which can operate on the very low type of uranium, not the nuclear, because they're used to the nuclear type in submarines. So it's a totally new thing. And what we're suffering now is an unsustainable renewable energy cost, absolutely unsustainable. And there's no reason why gas can't be today, and it is today. If you take it before this little war and take it back, it's by far the cheapest. I mean, to the UK householder, gas is just under 6 pence a kilowatt hour, and produced by electricity is 55 pounds a kilowatt hour if you remove all the messing about that goes on with the green business. Nothing comes near to it.
What did Ford? Ford has a famous saying: "If I asked customers what they wanted, they would have asked for faster horses." And I think, I work in the renewables industry because I'm a big environmentalist myself. I believe in sustainable energy. That being said, fossil fuels are a tool. I don't think the world and our infrastructure is really prepared to move away from fossil fuels. I would just say, if at least from my perspective, as I grew up in Australia, we've got a large fossil fuels industry in Australia. If you were to start drilling again in the UK, I just make sure that, the companies are paying their share, and, the people of your country are benefiting from it.
Good point. John?
Well, I think, markets are pretty much driven internationally. So although I do agree with, us fracking and starting to drill more, I'm not sure how long it would actually take to filter through for the, British population to benefit. I'm not educated enough to give a guess on that, but I think it would take a while.
I think we should. I think we should start exploration again, drilling. We're going to need a certain amount of fossil fuels, whatever you want to do. If you want to build loads of turbines, you need loads of oil, loads of composite materials, metals, cement, concrete. The list is endless. I think that should be. I think we should be doing that here. I don't think we should be importing it as much as we can. And gas is not it's not traded internationally. Gas, that's what oil is, but gas is not. And therefore, that if we can produce as much gas as ourselves in that intermediate time, we can lower the cost here more easily.
Yeah, that's a really good point, to be honest with you. And I think, I posted something on my Facebook page, and yeah, the answers were drill, baby, drill. That's all they were. It was like boom, 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 boom. I would say about 90% of the people wanted, but we need balance, don't we? And I've put these solars on my farm shed because John has been my energy consultant for quite a long time, so he knows I've been in hot water and trouble with companies because overcharge, strong contacts, standing fees. It's an absolute minefield for businesses and for a farmer that just wants to carry on with his work when he gets hit by an £88,000 bill for his electric. That was a bit of a shocker, wasn't it, John?
It was, and I seem to recall it got some national press coverage as well, and rightly so. And for the average kind of human being dealing with that, that could break someone. And it shouldn't be underestimated, the stress that it can cause, and like we see it on a daily basis. So I'm glad that they did behave themselves quite rapidly once it got a bit of exposure, but the general member of public wouldn't really be able to achieve that. So
yeah, well, fair play to John. He's dealt with a few other farmers that I pointed in their direction, and businesses, and they've dealt with it. That's their speciality. It is a minefield, and that's what drove me again to try and be more self-sufficient, as in the solars. And I'm a bit of a hypocrite as well, because I've been most probably one of the biggest doubters of solar for a long time. So I have to eat my words a bit. But I'm still one of these people that don't want to see solar on productive farmland, on land to produce food. You know, if we've got land that is, you know, useless for anything else, but we've got hundreds and thousands of acres of roof space, industrial, commercial, you know, private. We can utilize that, and, you know, using smaller companies like we did, Carbon Zero and Solar Edge. You know, they were brilliant because they came, they looked at the farm, they looked at what system worked, and it was just fresh air for me, because I know then I've got that system there, and I've got some kind of energy security, which in the long run will help my children have an opportunity to do what I've been doing for years, you know, and that's farming, because there'll be less pressure on them to pay them energy bills.
I did a paper today, this morning, and what it shows is this system you've got, Gareth, it only exists with subsidy, and the subsidies are rather hidden. It's the fact that it does occur, the electricity at the wrong time of day, and it doesn't occur in the right season either. And because of that, you're having to have backups of gas, which suffer incredible costs. And there's a simple paper I've done, it's only 2.5 pages long, and what it shows is the average well farm, going for that system you're going for, is around about £1,100 subsidy a year from the taxpayer. If you did it in a free market without all the green hidden subsidies, it wouldn't be economic for you. You wouldn't be doing it. But you're also suffering because of all this, because of what you pay for your normal electricity, which is premium. It's about 3 times higher than it should be at the moment. We should be in a region of 11 or 12p a kilowatt hour. With the standing charge, we're paying roughly 33p a kilowatt hour for the consumer, and that's what you're paying. So overall, you are suffering from the whole system, although you're gaining from this individual part. And there is a paper, I go through every calculation very simply.
Oh, when I got 5 minutes, Paul, I'll have a look at it. I'm going to ask Jacob to come in here now. This could get tasty.
I mean, I think it's interesting, right? Because I had a little read through your paper, Paul, and I think your estimations are around at the higher end towards like 1.6 billion in subsidies to the taxpayer. But we already pay quite high subsidies, or the government subsidizes the fossil fuel and energy industry quite substantially, right? And I'm not the expert, you are, but I did take your point, right? Like, it is generating more electricity in the summer months when your need for energy is lower. I think this is why we're seeing the adoption of commercial storage at such high rates right now. So you're seeing residential and commercial storage being installed almost more than just PV at the moment. And then you've got like the likes of Octopus and these energy companies who are creating these grid services infrastructures and almost creating like a virtual power plant. And I think it is heading in the direction that they're going to be using this infrastructure to be able to offset some of these benefits or some of these downsides that you've pointed out.
Sorry, from the engineering point of view, that's not right. There's no such thing as long-term storage. Let me give you an example. In 2018 and 2022, we had 2 wind droughts. One was 18 days and one was 22 days. Yes, the cost of storage in batteries for that would be 7 trillion and more, because we demanded that on the market to go to 10 trillion easily. Not viable. And all government plan depends on hydrogen, because as they increase solar now, the compensation payments become considerable. You said you disagree slightly in taking the high side. My paper didn't. My paper took the middle road, but it doesn't matter. It's still billions of subsidy, and that billions of subsidy is coming onto your electricity rate today, and you're paying it. So financially, Gareth is far worse off if compared to what we could have if we were sensible. Net zero is dying everywhere now, and thankfully it is. But basically, what the big problem is now for our society is we're quadrupling things solar, trebling wind, and when we go for that, we've got nowhere to store all the excess. And there's no storage system except hydrogen. I've done a paper on that. Do you know what it works out to? Hydrogen is 19 times the cost if you take it through that route to give you electricity. 19 times. Now, if you argue and say, okay, Paul, it's only 12 times, it doesn't matter. So I have detailed papers on all these subjects. I really do go into it, and I advise people on it behind the scenes, as you were. But so this idea of storage is a myth. There is no long-term storage. What there is batteries that you can take the cheap stuff overnight and sell it the next day high. But even that ceases to exist financially if you lower all the prices and behave sensibly. The fact is, gas to gas is around about 74 pence a therm, which is over 29 kilowatt hours. That's less than 3 pence a kilowatt hour. When it ends up straight to the consumer, it's under 6p. When it ends up with electricity, it's about 11p. And that is what we're ignoring. And we export gas from America, LNG and everything. Comes from all over the place. Qatar is another big one. So when you look at these things, it's fanciful to think that we've got some sort of storage, because we haven't got it. And nobody gives the calculations or the papers to counter anything that's stated on this. And you've got serious consultants in this, such as Catherine Porter, stating we're heading for blackouts. And then again, batteries are not very good for blackouts. I've got a 6 kilowatt generator, cost me, with all the connections to the house, 3,000 quid. And I can run that 6 kilowatt day after day after day, when 20 kilowatts of batteries will be gone in a day or two. Are you with me?
Yeah, like I do get your point, but like, just as an example, Gareth has a couple of batteries on his site, right? And you use them at 100% of self-consumption. So you're generating your energy and then using that to that energy that you've stored in your off-peak times.
I'm not exporting anything, everything stayed on farm. I wasn't there to make money off what I was producing.
And like, how have you found your bills impacted so far, Gareth, since you've taken on the change? Like, you've seen a difference?
Oh, big difference. But I'm tending to agree with some of the things Paul's saying. I think, our bills are so astronomically high. It makes no sense. But I can't get my head around that we're paying one of the highest energy bills in the world. And for a small island country, that should have, the right kind of electricity. Why are we so expensive? It's just bonkers.
Because of renewables. It's because of renewables. It's because they'll quote you something like solar is something like 50. When you look it up, £50 a megawatt hour. When you look it up, all those prices are in 2012 prices. So you have to increase them. So it ends up at 70 odd pounds an hour. Wind is up to £300 an hour. And they're now increasing it. Well, they're ruining the whole of Wales. They're ruining the whole of Wales.
Come on, Paul. Wind is going to be the solution for mid-Wales. People are going to be rich. They're going to have, money coming into the community. Applied Cymru saying today.
Where's the money coming from, Gareth?
It's
coming
I don't know.
I
haven't got a clue. I'm just listening to the politicians.
No, I love Wales, and to watch Wales be ruined, view of Wales be ruined the way it's being ruined. And in mid Wales, I have another part. I have a business in mid Wales, and I've lived most of my life in mid Wales. And to watch it being ruined the way it is for nothing except to add bills. So it's okay for Jacob to say he disagrees, and I'm being respectful, Jacob, saying it's a bit high, 1.6 billion subsidy, only 16,000 million. Yeah. Oh, that's a bit high. And it may be.
Sorry, I wasn't saying it's a bit high. I was just saying that I was using the high number from your paper, right? And I had a little look up, and I think the UK subsidizes about 18 billion to the oil and gas industry every year.
Well, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Let me explain.
But just to get away from the money for a second, Paul. I think the reason I work reason I work in renewables is to do with pollution, right? And yes, I'm not an expert in wind, so I don't really want to get into that. But the reason that I think the government is pushing net zero, the reason why so many young people are interested in renewables, is because it's about reducing overall carbon emissions. Right? At the end of the day, we're seeing the impact of climate change and global warming across the world at the moment as we speak.
No, they're not. They're not. This is absolutely ridiculous. If I told you, if I told you, first of all, I'm going to give you a list of things. We can find no human influence on droughts. Worldwide I'm talking, we can find no human influence on tornadoes, on hurricanes. We can find no human influence on floods. Who do you think could be saying that? I'll tell you now. IPCC. That's the scientists in the IPCC. I start off my talks with this. I show them the table from the latest of the IPCC. And all those extreme weather events are not backed up by the IPCC scientists, and it's actually in the report. What you're talking about is the way maybe young people like you have. I'm 81, so you obviously, you've been brought up in a totally brainwashed environment, and they don't stand up.
I mean, brainwashed to an extent. Like, I was living in Australia when we've had multiple record bushfires in my lifetime. I've seen the Great Barrier Reef. I saw it when I was 12 years old. I went back again maybe 5 years ago, and almost the entire thing had bleached from ocean temperatures warming. So, like, these are real things. These are real things we can see, right?
So, no, first of all, I was there for the bushfires, by the way, because it came all over. I went around the world in my own boat, and I managed to get the whole boat covered with the stuff. Those bushfires.
There was soot in the air for months.
As your head of the fire brigade said, it's because green policies stop them gathering the buildup in the forest around.
I could have sent them some sheep there and some cows to graze it.
And they actually, it was a man-made cause, and the facts are there. As regards the Great Barrier Reef, Peter Ridd, Professor Peter Ridd, examined the whole barrier reef. It's the healthiest it's ever been on record. I give you all the data, I give you the graphs, I give you the facts. To say the whole barrier reef, which is an enormous thing, by the way, you just made a statement which is silly. The whole barrier reef is bleached? No. The whole barrier reef now, than it's ever been, the best health it's ever been in the world. This is brainwashing, Daily Mail, Daily Star, whatever you like stuff. It is not the truth. And that's why I've done 300 videos countering these. And I go on IPCC experts. I go on this. The whole of net zero as a scam. I want to see more CO2 because it actually helps everybody. And by the way, people don't even understand the disagreement with the two sides. The only disagreement is this. We both agree if we double CO2 now, we'll get 1 degree centigrade increase in 175 years. Both sides agree on that. What do they disagree on? The alarmist side says, but more warming causes more warming causes more warming, and more cooling causes more cooling. That's ridiculous. So I'm sorry, all this is just propaganda I'm hearing. It is not fact. And in the case of Gareth would be far better off, and Wales would be far better off, if we just had electricity at 11 and 12 pence. Right, because it would make.
But that's not going to happen, is it, Paul?
Well, it can happen. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but
I'm working with parties to make sure it happens. Because to do that, we've got to get rid of net zero, and we've got to get rid of all of it. And it includes setting aside 20% of farms for forestry and wilding in Wales, example, and making small farms uneconomic unless they depend on government subsidy. I'm sorry, the whole thing.
I'm gonna interject. I'm gonna bring Ben in now because Ben's got his own riff just to calm the situation down. I'll bring some water into it now, Jacob. You know, like we're bringing some water. We're bringing in some hydro.
Cool.
There's a bit of steam here now. Go on, Ben.
What it shows is that energy, it's an expansive subject, isn't it? This could go on, our discussion here could go on for hours and hours and hours about and it's all interlinked. But I think what it comes down to is there's different people have a different view on the power. Gareth, you've found the benefits and you've seen the benefits that you get from your solar. That has a value to you. It has a value to you financially and also mentally. You have that security of energy that you're producing, and there is also some. I mean, I say nuclear is important, and I also say that we should be drilling in gas, but small scale renewables. I don't agree with large industrial developments. I don't think they're necessary, but the small scale, I think everything can be done in balance. I mean, we don't require the grid here. I'm not like you. I don't require anything. I don't sell anything back to the grid, and I don't take anything from the grid anymore. The benefit of looking at very small scale wind and very small scale water turbines is the fact that you can run them alongside solar, and where you get the dips in solar, you tend to get a rise in small micro hydro. But we're not talking about a grid scale thing here. We're talking very much more individual. So you can have very viable systems that run and generate an extreme, if my system, if it's on a minimum, you're generating 25 kilowatts. I overpanel my solar. So I've got vastly more solar panels than I need, which is what we should also be doing in Wales. The cost is minimal and the gain is maximum. So today it was, I'd imagine I'm down to southwest Wales, but it's been raining and overcast all day. I've still generated 25.2 kilowatts today.
Wow.
So, and that's just purely from solar. And that's purely from over paneling and reaching higher voltage levels, which tends not to be done in systems for some reason. I don't know why. People don't do that. The cost of panels is cheap. The panels are dirt cheap. We should just put more panels up and let the inverters clip it. And so we gain it, put it into the storage, use that overnight. I'm on that now. And the cost for me for that is... it's twofold. It's financial. It's no bills apart from the initial capital expense. I did not get any grant. I did not get any subsidy for the system. And it just shows what can be done. If I could export it, on my peak days, in my worst days on water is 26 kilowatts, 86 kilowatt peak. 315 kilowatts a day for peak solar production. Clearly, I can't utilise all of that amount of power. I store what I can, and I never go short. So, if you extrapolate that out and get small systems expanded, so if people had larger panel system, I'm not quite sure why on UK houses we're restricted on however many panels we can have on roofs. Let's face it, the average person's roof on their house is crap. What it looks like is just a tiled roof. You might as well just put solar panels on it. So rather than going, you can only have 5 solar panels, just cover the thing in solar panels.
Is that off grid? Are you off grid completely?
Yeah.
We were just talking about the benefits of having all of Mid Wales covered in wind turbines, and with how beneficial it'll be for the communities there. What's your thoughts on it?
Zero. There'll be no benefit to the community at all. It's horrendous. These things are 850 feet tall. They want 500 of them. So just the damage that will be done building the access road should kill the project immediately. I think the biggest problem with that we have. My fridge runs all the time. My freezer runs all the time. My internet runs all the time. All these AI data centers, they'll be running all the time. And what we need is a power system that we can run all the time when it's not windy and it's dark.
But Jason, somebody must have made these calculations and looked at it and thought it's got to be profitable, it's got to be workable.
Yeah, but that's going to increase incredibly, because what we're doing is increasing the amount of energy, and that there's nowhere to put it. And there's no such thing as storage. But there's no long-term storage at all. You can store for a day or so, but that's it.
So, Jason, you're telling me they're paying 6.9 billion for them wind turbines not to produce energy? Or am I got that wrong? No wonder my bloody electric is so expensive.
Well, it is. Your electric's expensive because the whole thing is scam. It's a scam.
Going to turn up.
And Jason is totally right on everything he just said. It's a total scam. There is, when you say someone's got to do the calculations, let me tell you something. All the wind farm companies, all of them, the biggest one, Ørsted and so on, have had their shares collapsed to 5% of what they were, and 95% drop. Why? Because the people who've already invested have found out it's a scam, and they actually don't get the money back long term, because the length of life of these things is nothing like what they claim. So I've done videos and papers on this explaining where they're going, and they're looking for new customers, because the whole thing is ridiculous, and it is totally subsidized by the taxpayer, which puts up the electricity bill enormously, 3 times. I love nuclear, but the ones in Morphna are 3 times to 4 times the cost of what they should be, right? We have a unique thing in nuclear in this country, 7,000 extra regulations on top of the international one. So you're more at risk of radiation in your car on the way to work than you are in work. It's ridiculous. And so in every aspect of this, every aspect of net zero is wrong. And when you go on about off-grid, fine, I understand that totally. That's a totally different subject. But on-grid, solar does not pay for itself, full stop. And if there was no subsidies in the system, it would not pay for itself. And
Paul,
nor would it for you, Gareth.
Paul, do you think that the 7 barrage should be something that was pressed forward with or not?
Well, I actually looked at that. I was water resource engineer for the whole of Wales.
Okay.
And my job was planning all water resources. And I looked at it, and unfortunately not. And one of the problems there is on the tidal barrages, and they cheat on the figures, by the way, with the Swansea one and things. But on the big tidal barrages, which I looked at and said, wow, this could be good, because there's enough energy there to supply nearly Europe, never mind Britain, right? But the trouble is, you have it twice a day, and you have it declining, just like a tide goes slow, and when it gets to the middle of the tide, that's the fastest, and it slows down.
I get that. Could you not then run that alongside? So instead of, say, doing offshore wind, everything else like, could you then have the 7 barrage providing a big chunk of it, some form of small
cost? It doesn't work out on
then a
cost.
base load provided by.
It doesn't work out on cost. It's just
but
nowhere near.
We're spending billions at the moment just turning stuff off, paying not to produce stuff.
But we shouldn't be doing it at all. We should be dispatchable energy. We should be on dispatchable energy, and we should not bother with the wind, and we should welcome the extra CO2 because it's hugely beneficial to the Earth. It is not what people think. If you double CO2, we will get a 1 degree centigrade rise average worldwide. Average. Most of that will occur towards the poles. Roughly what that means is you get 80 to 100 miles further north before the tree line, ends, right? So we would have, in Wales, we would have a warmer climate by a little bit. And that's all. That's
more
what
humidity.
Pardon?
More humidity.
Yes. And so
as long as we don't get more rain.
Well, that's it. You will do.
And by the way, I've done a paper. I've done a paper recently which explains every single year's temperature in the world since 1982, the whole of this alarmism period, and it explains it exactly. So exact when a volcano occurs, you can see the effect. That is 22% of that is due to mankind. 22% of the increase in the temperature. That's all. And so yes, CO2 is a greenhouse gas, but its effect is less and less and less on what we call a log scale too. And so the whole thing, just like Gareth, I would do what Gareth has done if I had Gareth's farm. I would do the same thing. And the company who's provided this, I think they're fantastic for the job they've done. John, I think you've done a fantastic job. Nothing but praise for you and your company. But you're working within an environment. You've got to work with it. What I'm trying to do is change that entire environment. And basically, net zero will collapse. We are heading for blackouts. The idea that by 2030 we only have 5% gas is so ridiculous that you can't have a whole industry there waiting all the time based on just supplying 5%. And when you have to get out the way to let that solar in the middle of the day with gas, you still have to use 50% of the gas just to stand still in standby. All sorts of issues come into this.
I'm going to bring John in now because I think it's important that we hear his voice because he's the only guy on here that sells the energy. So, what are you going to take away from this tonight, John? And, we know it's a volatile market. You work in it on a daily basis. And how do we better things? How can we educate people of getting the best deals and asking the right questions?
So firstly, just to Paul, thanks for the compliment about putting the solar on Gareth's farm, but that wasn't me. I'd love to take the credit for that. So I think Jacob had some involvement, and then there was another company called Carbon Zero. So I would love to steal that thunder, but I won't do that. So credit there. It sounds like they've done a fantastic job.
People have got rid of the last bad suppliers. I thought you were there, no?
So I think, we're talking really with this helicopter view and, like we're right down, I guess, in the trenches, just dealing with businesses every day and they're trying to manage these energy bills. And just to kind of, in 2022, when we entered the energy crisis with the Ukraine-Russia war, we saw energy prices spike and people could see it coming, but really the government were very late to step in, and I think that's a common theme. And you know, I don't think it's going to be quite as extensive with the issues going on in Iran, but you know, I think there is still a risk, and always it's the businesses on the front line that suffer. They absorb the impact of the energy costs and the energy rises. In 2022 and through to 2020, you know, mid 2023, the government did bring in subsidies, such as the energy bill discount scheme, and then a lesser version called the energy bill relief scheme, which was much less help to businesses, but still it was something. So I think just coming back to the kind of here and now, and what we need to deal with that's like on our doorstep and on our plate is we need to try and quench some of the energy market volatility that's going on. And I think that the government could be doing a lot more, a lot earlier. We really should have learned the lessons from the previous energy crisis, to see the warning signals. And it just blows my mind that we've still not really seen any great action or initiatives from the government to put businesses and homes, you know, and their minds at ease. And so there are still businesses that we speak with today that are locked into energy tariffs that were sold at the peak of the energy crisis. So it's not long ago that we got a client that was on 70 pence per kilowatt for electricity, you know, and so
A business.
so I think coming back to we need to see more from government. We need to see Ofgem and bodies like the Energy Ombudsman, which, you know, is on its way out, being held more accountable and actually given teeth. Because really, you know, the corporations that are benefiting are the energy suppliers, and you know, and there's no accountability. They've made record profits, you know, at the behest of the national population that's subsidising these big corporations. So I think there's, aside from Solve, and you know, there's brains in this room are far too big for me to kind of contribute to. And I think, yeah, there's a long-term solution.
Thanks, John.
somewhere. That's not for me. But I think we need to do more here and now to protect businesses and farms on the front line, and particularly agriculture's really had a rough time with energy prices. And so on the front lines, on the day to day, you know, we need to do something to protect energy bills so that they don't bring, you know, agriculture farmers and businesses to the knees again.
Well, I'll jump in and give you an example. John's partner, I do a lot, both the lads, and Stephen gave me a call. He says, you better jump in and sign these contracts ASAP. So we did them before the war was hit. And he was doing calculations for me today, and he saved me £7,000. £7,000. £7,000 has been saved on one contract. That's just one of the farms that we have. So we have a few different farms. But what I'm saying is, you know, is having these people with the expertise is really, really important. And it is a minefield out there. It's an absolute minefield. And, you know, the way that some of these energy companies are getting away with murder, you know, getting people to sign off things, agree on the phone. John knows that we went into a bit of a hole with this, and cost us a lot of money. And I totally agree with what John says. You know, we need some kind of ombudsman that can go with teeth and sort these people out, because it just seems to be this country's in such a mess, from, you know, the turbines that have been, you know, set up there, and the energy crisis and the prices and how people are struggling anyway. It just makes no sense to me that we're in this position, you know, for the fifth wealthiest country in the world. How the hell are we going to carry on paying these kind of bills for the next 10 years? There's no opportunities for businesses to develop.
No, I mean, what they've done in South Wales, they got rid of 3,000 jobs in Port Talbot with the steelworks, yeah? And that actually is probably 10,000 jobs with all the suppliers and the shops and everyone else. And then they put in electric furnace subsidised, costing the taxpayer, which is then going to be supplied with electricity 4 times the cost of our competitors. How can you run a business where your main cost, which is energy and making steel, this is scrap steel, of course, but you're using for scrap, how can you compete? You can't compete. We are being run by madmen. And the only solution to all of this, I don't believe it's ombudsman. I think you've got practical problems with companies like you've dealt with, which have helped you tremendously. And I think that is needed out there. There's no doubt, because that's today's situation. But the real solution is to get rid of net zero. And if you're rid of net zero, you haven't got any of this nonsense.
Oh, gosh. So we're going to go round now, and we're going to finish off with, do we want to kill net zero? So I'm going to start with Jason.
Yes, 100%. It's cost us £320 billion since year 2000 and achieved exactly the opposite of what it's supposed to be achieving. It's absolutely ridiculous. Stupid policy.
Yes, we should. But there needs to be there are benefits for doing something. And the industrial wind side of things, onshore especially, is complete madness. But there are benefits to be had for smaller scale renewables on a much larger, widespread out, so we don't have to have massive grid infrastructure expansion and things like that. But yes, it should be. Should kill it.
Kill it. John?
Yeah, I think we should scrap net zero, but totally agree that we've seen in practice that solar and some technologies can be, massively beneficial. And so we should take the good and leave the bad.
Jacob?
I don't think so. I think it's a good goal to work towards, but it needs some refinement.
I don't think I have to ask Paul where he's going with this, because I think I know the answer, but you're going to have to give us one.
Look, there are some applications. I'll give you an example. I've got 3 heat pumps for hot tubs and things, swim spa and things like that. And there are applications like that where they come into account. But I did a paper on just one thing. Just one thing. The first cost, there was 300 odd billion of cost since 2000 is wrong. It's a huge amount more than that. Just on the performance certificates for houses, the EPC certificates, you've got to get your house done. I did a paper on that, and the cost savings on that is 30 odd to 50 odd billion if you make them voluntary. So you don't make it compulsory to have the heat pump. You don't make it compulsory to charge more to put a tax on the gas. We've got to get rid of net zero in its entirety. Behind that, there will be some locations, certainly off grid, and certainly in some little ways, which things are beneficial. No problem, right? But as regards a grid, I've done a big paper on the whole of net zero, and the cost today to this country, allowing for the opportunity cost where we could otherwise be, is between 700 billion and 1.1 trillion a year. That's saying you could have had this going because we have cheap energy at the steelworks, it still could be doing that, etc. And then you've got to look at the cost to the auto industry, which has been ruined by the stupid EV program. And by the way, Jacob, I even have a Tesla, right? So I'm not 100%.
Hey, so
even
I
don't have an EV, Paul.
I didn't do it. I did it because I hate driving and it drives me. Right.
People, I would like to thank you all for your time. It's been an absolutely amazing podcast. I've learned a lot, and I'm gonna rethink my net zero, but I'm still supportive of my solar. I think it's fantastic, and I love the small hydros as well. Looking at the wind turbines, talking to you two, I think I'm gonna do a on them now. I really don't think it's going to be beneficial. So it's a little bit of a balance for me. It's getting the right renewables in the right places. Nuclear looks like a great one. Gas from Paul. But at that note, I'm going to say nos dawch a diolch yn fawr iawn. So good night, and thank you very much for an absolutely amazing hour of fun and knowledge.
Hope you enjoyed our latest podcast. So like and subscribe, and there'll be a lot more coming very, very shortly.